Ready to start?
Yes. Guys, thank you for being here. My name is Stewart. I am going to be teaching today about salvage and overhaul. Just a little bit about myself. I have been in the fire service for almost 6 years now. I ride Rescue 1 at Galveston Fire Department as the senior firefighter. I've had a little bit of experience with salvage and overhaul, and I'm going to try to teach you a little bit more about it today. What we're going to cover in the class is why we do it, how to do it, and the actual hands-on part. That's the second half of the class of the actual practical application of opening up a wall and searching for fire extension and the different types of constructions that it can spread with, okay? So now we're gonna go on, do our thing. Topic, okay, got all that, class objectives, preparations, step information. Okay, so now we're here. What can anybody here tell me about overhaul? I know you guys are new and you don't really know a whole lot about the fire service, but has anybody ever heard of that before? What salvage and overhaul is? Anybody? You have Colton?
I think we start that process after we've extinguished the fire, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Mainly, the primary objective of salvage and overhaul is to save what you can, and then look for fire extension and to try to completely control the fire. Okay, at the end of it. So that's what we do after the fact. I will say this is a pet peeve of mine. One of the things that I want everybody to remember whenever you are in salvage and overhaul mindset is to stay in full gear. Okay, there are smoke, vapors, all kinds of bad stuff that can get into you and hurt you along the way with this. It's not worth it. Stay in full gear, breathing on air. If you have to come out multiple times to do this, if you're breaking a wall open or going up and down different levels, just please be safe about this, because this is what causes cancer and all that other stuff, the negative, bad stuff you hear about. So that's a pet peeve of mine. Also, this is something that I would like everybody who goes in for salvage and overhaul to attach to them, or have one person completely designated to this, is to monitor the atmosphere inside the location and where you're doing it. It's a gas monitor. It measures your oxygen and other things like that. We'll have another class soon on that. Also, yeah, so that's it. Now we're on to where to overhaul. Has anybody ever heard of fire resistive construction before? Different things like that at all? Does anybody know what that is? Is it Firefighter West? What can you tell me about?
Is it, like, it's less apt to burn?
Yes, and there are different areas in buildings where fire can be in and we just don't know it's there, okay? Now there's a bunch of like tools that we have at our disposal, and I'll get into that a little bit later whenever we get into the hands-on of this, but there's something called a thermal imaging camera, which is great to use. It helps us see through walls, and we can see where the fire is going. There's a bunch of different aspects. Utility shafts is one of them. The pipe chases, the doors or dampers that did not close tightly. Again, this is a big thing, because all it takes is for a slight opening and that fire can go through there and rekindle in an area that it had no exposure to initially. Wood frame construction and ordinary construction in this situation, there's different types of wood frame. One of the most obvious for salvage and overhaul that you need to look for is the balloon. We'll get to that in just a second, but it can go up in between the walls. It can get in there. Insulation. Older houses, a lot of older homes, and I actually own a home with this in it. It's very old, built 1935. They actually use newspaper for the insulation in between the walls. And I know that sounds crazy now, but like, that's something to think about. If my rental home ever catches fire, that's something that the responding units are going to need to do probably a lot more salvage and overhaul in that situation. There's the balloon frame construction. Now, has anybody heard of balloon frame construction before? Everybody familiar with what it is? You guys are pretty knowledgeable for a bunch of recruits. I'm very impressed with this. It's almost like you have years and years of experience at this table. What can somebody tell me about balloon frame construction? Anybody feel free just to spout it out whenever you're ready.
Fire can get above you real quick.
That's true. And how does it do that exactly? Like, what makes balloon frame construction like different? What do you see here?
It travels up the void spaces.
Okay. So you're going. So there's nothing in between the levels that's going to stop it from going up. Is that what you're telling me? Okay, that's exactly right. Now, why is that bad though? Like, why does that matter? That it can just run up real fast. Why is balloon frame construction, I guess, so risky for us to make sure we know that that fire's out?
But hot gases can go all the way, and then jump stories.
That's true.
You have a fire in the basement and go all the way up to the attic.
That's exactly right. Now, has anybody ever had any actual experience with balloon frame construction in the field? You have, Firefighter Stevens? Okay, nice. Did you guys contend with the salvage, the overhaul aspects of this
It was an extensive amount of overhaul.
Okay. You had to take out walls, I'm assuming, and remove insulation and different things like that along
A
the
lot of
way.
attic work. It started in the first floor, and we attempted an interior and got backed out real quick.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Like you guys have already said, fire can spread from the basement to the attic without showing on other floors. Careful overhaul of every floor is required. That's what Firefighter Stevens, he touched on. And really the risk of this is because the balloon frame construction, that floor member is just attached to the vertical members there with any sort of hardware that it could be used, but that floor could potentially collapse, and then that could actually cause a pancake effect, if you can imagine just floor after floor after floor falling. So obviously, that's a very important part of salvage and overhaul there. Look for voids created by remodeling. This is a huge thing. I know up front, like me and a firefighter, like Pryor, went on a fire on West Eastland where we had the remodel where there was an exterior window on the interior of a house. Do you remember that? It was over, and we couldn't figure out how exactly to get in this room, but there was no window on the outside of the house. It was on the inside room where they had added an addition to it, and it was so confusing. I was new then. You had been here a while, but yeah, it was very confusing, like to me, to see this window and it not go anywhere. Really, it just went into another room. False ceilings, false doors are not. False doors basically like the false window that I was mentioning there. And again, in my rental house, just as a little anecdote, there are multiple false doorways in there to where you go into a place and you think it's going to be this big room, and it's just not. You know, it's like a small closet where they're just trying to maximize the most amount of space. But again, this is a reason we overhaul, is because if it stays in there, we don't know it. Air gets to moving in there and it could rekindle and really cause a lot more severe damage there. Obviously, there's multiple ways that we can figure this out. We have thermal imaging cameras. Mainly, we want to smell, right? That's how we find. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke. We don't want to smell. We want to use this to smell to see if we got any more smoke going on. Also, we want to look for smoke, look for embers. Later on, whenever we go through the practical aspect of this, and you actually rip the drywall and the insulation out, you're going to look in and look up and kind of visualize and see if you can see any of the burned areas, any of the discolorations, like peeling paint. Peeling like paint or cracked plaster is also another thing to hit on, because it may be in behind there, it could be really hot, and that paint is wanting to come off the walls. It's so hot, and you just don't know it, other than the visual aspects that you're looking at. Listen for crackling sounds and hissing sounds. That one may be a little bit harder to do unless it's very, very loud. Just because you're going to be masked up. There's going to be other noises going on. There's engines outside running, and that's probably going to be hard. Now, feel is definitely one that we can think about here. Using the back of your hand. Maybe it's maybe you see the paint, that's wanting to like peel off, and you don't have access to a thermal imaging camera like this right here. So you put your glove back and you feel that wall to see where the paint, is peeling. Just as kind of, you get a sense of, wow, that is hot. There's something happening here. Maybe there's not, but let's investigate a little bit. And here we go, the thermal imager. This is a great tool if you know how to use it. Again, that's a whole other class in and of itself. But it shows minute differences in the temperature of different objects. Okay, in some objects it will show very well. Other objects, reflective surfaces, it won't have much use on. But a wall, a floor, a ceiling, a door, different things like this, it can show you where here it's 75 degrees and here it's 180 degrees. So clearly there's something going on in and behind there that we need to be thinking about to investigate a little bit further. Usually the officer will have this with them whenever you go in on a overhaul operation, or maybe a senior firefighter. So they're going to be looking through, finding the spots on the wall, and will signal to one of the other personnel to say, hey, let's open this section of wall up right here. I'm getting a higher heat signature. And then we're going to go into the practical side of it too. If you'll bear with me for just 1 second, let me change this. Okay, now here's the meat of it. Everybody knows what a pickhead axe is, correct? That's this one right here, okay? Now what we're gonna do here, and in just a minute I'm gonna have all of you go outside and we're gonna practice this on our wall prop that we have outside. And we're actually gonna light some fires in behind it, use the thermal imaging camera so you can see. Just kidding about that. But no, we are going to go through what this would simulate and the simulations that you would do. Very self-explanatory. I feel like I've covered this already, but let's go through it step by step, just so everybody's clear, and so we can remain as safe as possible whenever we're doing this. We're going to determine which area of the wall will be opened up. And again, the officer in charge will usually be the one with the camera or making that executive decision to say, hey, let's do this. And really, the reason that you want someone else there with a higher rank to verify this is because you may just be gung-ho on adrenaline at this point, okay? And you're thinking, I just want to break walls down and do this. Well, that's going to cost somebody money along the way, and yeah, it's just drywall, but at somebody's house, at somebody's property, let's not create more damage than there already is, right? Has anybody ever actually had to do this and had to deal with the homeowner after the fact, and they're mad or irate that why'd you put a hole in my wall? Okay,
Yeah.
you have like Firefighter West. Were they happy that you did that? Now granted, there's probably a give and take there because you're looking for risk.
They didn't really understand why the extent of damage got to where it did, but through explanation through our senior officers, they were a little more understanding.
Right.
And they were still dealing with a lot of emotions at that point too,
Sure.
which contributed to that.
And again, this is a very emotional time. Their home, their property, their life is caught on fire. I mean, so let's again always deflect this. If you don't feel that you can handle it yourself, always go to a superior officer, and if they can, they'll do it. If not, they'll just keep moving up the chain of command until eventually we'll find somebody who can handle those emotions appropriately. But also always listen to your officer and follow their discretion. After the officer says, hey, I want this section of wall right here opened up, the firefighter, again, full gear, masked up, gloves on, ready to go, will get the axe and will cut vertically, okay? See what he's doing there? He's cutting vertically through the wall in between the studs, generally about 16-inch centers. So you're gonna go in between there. You're also gonna be looking visually for any electrical wires, any switches, any conduits, anything that could cause harm. And again, check with your officer. Do we need to shut the electricity off here? Do we need to shut off the gas before we do this? Hopefully all that stuff's already been done because the house is on fire. But verify that it hasn't. It's always a good thing to cover your bases, especially when dealing with gas or electricity. So you're going to cut through the top of the wall, cut downward through the studs. You're going to use the pick end of the axe to pull the wall material away from the studs and open the wall. And full disclosure here, the wall's not always going to be drywall or sheetrock or different soft materials. In fact, I had a fire one time to where it was actually wooden slats that I had never seen that. I had never heard of it. Me and another firefighter, his name was Firefighter Piccini, we were wailing and wailing on this wall and could make no progress. And finally, Chief Pryor came up and kind of explained to us what was happening. We figured out a different method because you can't use the same methods for drywall that you would for that type of construction. And again, that's a good reason to use a tick, good reason to really investigate and to learn like building construction, which is a whole other class in and of itself. So you're going to use the pick end of the axe to pull the wall material away from the studs and open up the wall. So what he's doing is he's getting it in there, he's pulling it back with this kind of emotion away from himself, away from the other firefighters, being as safe as possible. The officer's gonna be there with you, with the tick, visually looking, everybody again, trying to play a vital role here, making sure that there's no fire extension, no like burned embers, nothing that could continue to cause harm along the way. And again, you're gonna continue opening up the wall in whichever area you think until you have completely mitigated that risk, until you are 100% sure that there is no risk for fire extension or rekindle or anything along those lines. Spraying water is needed, using extinguisher is needed, and again, staying masked up in your gear all the time. Now guys, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you a test after this. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. Then I'm gonna give you a written exam. Then we're all gonna go outside the bay and we're gonna get in gear, full gear, on air, and we're gonna practice on the wall prop that we have outside, get to light some fires and get to pull some sheetrock away, okay? And so it's gonna be fun.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
What are you looking for? How do you know a good stopping point when you pull enough drywall and water?
That's actually a good question, and I would say any areas that look unburned on like past the area that is burned. I would continue to go into the next stud chase if it were me. And I think that's the right like terminology. I'm not a building construction expert by any means, but I don't know. Is there another method maybe that would be good for that? Does anybody know of another method? Go ahead. You have some ideas.
No, I was just trying to get you to say, go to the unburned and, a safe distance past that.
Right.
Where you feel confident there's nothing that's, progressed past
Yeah.
that point.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what we should do. And again, everybody around there in this scene should really try to play an active role and a part. And this is a good chance to learn about building construction. Anytime you get to do this, good chance to, again, work as a team. You get to learn things new from somebody who's been there, done that kind of thing. And again,
It depends on the direction also. Obviously, fire goes up, so we need to go a
True.
little farther up than we would down.
right. And does anybody else have any other questions about this, about Overhaul in general?
I think, one thing that I read in an article, they're talking now about flow paths and, being aware of the flow paths in the
Okay.
modern fire environment. So actually, they're looking at some overhaul even as venting.
Oh, okay.
So knowing when you open up a wall,
That's a good
that you
point.
could be connecting flow paths, that you're not just opening up a wall, that you could be actually exposing another part of the structure to fire. And-
Okay,
and
yeah.
It's almost coordinated with fire attack.
Okay.
In the same.
Well, that's a good point. Everybody make note of that to coordinate this kind of stuff with incident command outside and the operations officer in charge of doing all this stuff. Because yeah, it's probably no different than starting up a positive pressure fan or opening up a door in the back without realizing that hey, this thing might get serious real fast after we've opened up this wall. Good point. Thank you. Yes, sir. Firefighter Stevens.
Pulling ceiling from a safe location.
True. Yes, we had a incident of that happening a couple of years back. I remember that a ceiling fell. That's true. We should always be very careful and cognizant of our safe working area.
One thing else I've run into in Overhaul is blown in insulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible, as far as
Blown
spreading-
in
Yeah.
insulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll just run in it and run in it, and you'll find it in several different spots.
Okay.
And a lot of times you may have to consider like tarping below you and cutting out a huge section of ceiling.
Okay.
And removing a whole lot of that insulation.
Sure.
out. So.
Okay.
it's
That's a
one
good
thing I've
point
had to do
too.
before.
Yeah. See, that's what's great about this. You get a lot of different input from a lot of different people who've had varying levels of experience and stuff. And again, it's kind of what the fire service is. Everybody kind of chips in along their way and has their own role to play. So guys, I appreciate you letting me do this class. Thank you for the input and thank you for later on and the practical thing.